That's the new thing. They tell you now when it's being recorded. If for some reason you either want to take yourself off photo or take your name off, please feel free to, but we will be recording this so that it can be available later. I want to tell everyone here that we are happy. I don't see anyone here who has not been on and knows something about race class narrative. We'll talk at the end about starting to really reach out to more people with this topic. But today we're going to focus on the values. And our intent of this is to really give a deeper dive into values, but also to help us do something that we've been starting to do in this working group. And that is, how do we decide who is someone that is a persuadable, that it makes sense to do some more work with, to talk with, to set up a more long-term discussion with, and who is more what we're calling with the title here, a troll who just has an ideology and we're not going to get anywhere with them. So how do we gracefully back out of that? So we're doing two things really. We're looking at a deeper dive into values, but also starting to look at how do we deal with making decisions about where we put our energy. And we're going to have a role play where we get into that. We are going to be talking a lot about in this session, just because it's what's up, about voter suppression. But I want to sort of warn all of us, don't get caught in the topic of voter suppression. It could be, we could be talking about schools, which we just were before. We could be talking about healthcare. We could be talking about any number of things. So we're not going to get down the rabbit hole of voter suppression. We are really focused on the process of how we talk about values, how we take what people say and make decisions about working with them and turn it around so that we are talking about the issues that we are interested in and not following them. So I think, is this Dwayne, are you putting this up? Okay, you're muted, but that's fine, yes.
Yes, I'm catching up to you, Pam.
Okay, good. So one of the things that we are going to be talking about here, and we haven't in the group before, and we will continue to, is this is not a one-time exchange with people. This is going to be ongoing work in which we hold the focus on our values and what we want to talk about, and we don't get snared into talking about the way that they're putting it. So Dwayne is going to start off, and then Kristen will do, and then we'll do a wrap up. As you know, we try to end by 1 o'clock, so we have a lot to cover. So I'm turning it over to you, Dwayne.
Okay, so Pen, thanks for that introduction. I'm really looking forward to just digging in on these values, because I think that if we can start the conversations and lead the conversations and be able to think in terms of that is such a critical part, and it's a place where we don't normally go. I mean, when someone says something outrageous or crazy, we just want to say, that's not what's the fact. The fact is this. And we understand that engaging in conversations around facts really does not move anyone, because there's alternate facts now in our universe. And so digging into shared values is really a way to move it forward. And I just want to lift up what Penn said about what our expectations are, and just a little bit more about the house rule. So I like to call it the rabbit hole, and we can go down these rabbit holes, right? And so I want us to all be vigilant about it. And if there is a case where we think we're going down a rabbit hole because we only have an hour, someone like raise their hand or someone shout out, come off mute and shout rabbit hole, and we will get back on track, because it's really about how we're going to be engaging with people in the long-term view, and how are we coming to the conclusion of what these shared values are so that we can really utilize them. So I'm going to jump ahead and talk about values. Just jump right in. Isn't that a great picture of a troll? It took me a while to find that one. I thought it fit. So what are values? Well, values are something that are important. They show your worth. They show usefulness of something. I really like this definition of a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. So if we think about values in those terms, I think it becomes a little bit more clear what that is. And let me first say that when we're talking about shared values, That does not mean unanimous values, all right? Not everyone is going to be for clean air. Believe it or not everyone is going to be for clean air and clean water, okay? We may think that that's a shared value, but with everyone, it's not unanimous. It is a shared value. And so we have to understand that no matter what we say or what we do, there will be those people that we have conversations with or that we come in contact with, whether that be online, whether it's in person, whether it's like walking to your car or to the grocery store, whatever it might be, that will not come along with you on the ride of a shared value. That will not happen. And so it reminds me, I don't know if anyone listens to Pod Save America. I remember there was a conversation early on in the with the Trump administration. Someone said, oh my God, I have my crazy uncle who's coming over for Thanksgiving. And I know that, like, how do I engage with this crazy uncle who's doing this and doing that? And, you know, they're way over here, you know, conspiracy theories, all this kind of stuff. And the response, the unanimous response from Pod Save America was, don't talk to your uncle. Talk to 3 or 4 of your neighbors. And I think that that's a really important point, that we need to make sure that we are targeting correctly, or else we might as well just be talking to the wall, right? And that's why I'm excited to hear what Kristen is going to get into about finding out who our targets are and how we do that. So, but this is part of it as well, naming that value. So what I want to do is really dive right in and think about what an outrageous statement might be, and then let's do a brainstorm around that. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second because I want to look back at everyone here, see how many we have. What I would like to do, and Doug, I'm not sure if we're ready to do this, I would like to divide us into 2 groups. And I'm going to put up an outrageous statement, and we'll talk about it a little bit. And then in our 2 groups, I want each group to brainstorm what are the possible shared values that can relate to this outrageous statement that you can dig in on and actually have a conversation about. And try to come up with as many as you can. Some of them might be similar. And here's the rule for a brainstorm: anything is good. Like, just get it on there, write it down, assign someone in your group to kind of like, or maybe we'll have Penn and Kristen, maybe you can each take one, or I don't know how we're going to do that. But if we can make a list of what are the possible shared value. Now, you're going to have to resist the temptation to not go to shared values, but try to do that. Try to come up with those. And then when we come together as a group, we'll process it and see what we came up with. That sound like a plan?
Okay, you want 2 breakout rooms, right?
But
Yeah, if you
Kristen,
could just set up 2, and people can even self-select or something, or you can just divide us evenly.
I've already done it randomly.
Perfect. Cool. So let me go back to sharing. And are you ready for the unveiling here? What is the outrageous statement? So drum roll or something. Can someone? Yeah. Okay. Let's do the shared value. Let's see. So let's go back to our troll. And I love that picture so much, and Kristen did too, that we included it in on our outrageous statement. So here is the outrageous statement. Why are so many people upset? Why are people so upset about all the new laws to prevent voter fraud and ensure only legal votes are counted? Now, I know right now some heads are about to explode, right? That's a crazy statement, right? Like, why are people so upset about these new laws that just are meant to prevent voter fraud and ensure legal votes are counted? And I know our temptation is to be like, that's not what they're doing. They're doing this, right? But I want you to resist that. I want you to think about the shared value. So if you want to take a moment and jot this down, this statement down, and maybe, Kristen, I don't know if you can pop it maybe even into the chat so everyone can see it in the chat. I probably should have done that, but can someone quickly type it into the chat while it's up there? Why are people so upset about all the new laws to prevent voter fraud and ensure only legal votes are counted? It's all about the legal votes being counted. Okay, is it in the chat? Can I stop sharing? Is it there?
How long do you want the breakouts?
Did no one put it in the chat? Let's see, are we getting it in there? We should probably, it could probably move pretty quickly. I'd say like maybe 5 minutes, just 5 minutes when we're in the groups. There it is, Kristen, thank you. So everyone now has it in the chat. So, okay, so what's the goal? We're gonna break into these 2 groups. We're gonna disappear, and then we're gonna come back after 5 minutes and we're going to have a list of what possible shared values we can have a conversation about when someone makes a statement like that, or we see something like that on social media, or we're encountering something like that. So, okay, Doug, do your magic.
Before you break us out,
Yes.
put Kristen in one and me in another one, and Dwayne in one of the other.
Yeah, I know that random allows us to do that, but let's see what happens. Let's see.
Kristen's in one, in the separate one. Kristen's in both of them. She can take a choice.
Should I stop the recording until it comes back?
Yeah,
break out.
probably.
Like all kinds. Oh, we're back to recording again. So first of all, though, I want to hear from the other team. What were some of the key words, or what were the key values that came out of a little exercise right there?
Well, I wrote them down, so I'm going to read them, and then people can add to them. We all want elections to be fair. A point of agreement, we agree that only legal votes should be counted. We're in agreement with that, but you have to be able to see how we can get to that. We all want a voice. Somebody was speaking to sort of the underlying fear about voting. We all want safe neighborhoods and good schools. You wouldn't want to be told if you went to your polls that suddenly, after years of voting, you couldn't vote there. That wouldn't be something you'd want to have happen to you. We all have the right to vote, and our founders came to this country to create a system that everyone could vote. And the world looks to us, the United States, as somebody who, as a country where everybody has a right to vote, and that's protected. That's what we came up with. Anybody from our group want to add? Okay.
Wow, that's a pretty awesome list there, right? And you know what, it makes me think, there are a few things that came up there that I wasn't thinking about, and it's not really the go-to. And don't you feel that resistance, like you want to just say that's not what it's all about, it's all about this, and so we really have to kind of condition ourselves to think differently. In our group, we came up with the idea of our voting system is based on like being inclusive and the honesty factor that was in it. There was a discussion about the sanctity of our elections, so that kind of was hit on by your group as well, and that it is, and the tradition, it's one of the oldest democracies in the world, and that it, and the idea of how, like, the leadership role that you brought up with the United States, and freedom to vote, making it easy and not complicated, making sure that they're fair, which came up in your group as well, that we want a system that's fair. And so there were a lot of similarities that happened there too. How would you feel being disenfranchised if you showed up and all of a sudden you were told you couldn't vote, when that's a right? Our freedom to vote is fundamental to us. So I'm wondering, I'm going to throw that statement back up, and I'm going to give a quick shot at a very simple opening statement using one of those values, and see how that sounds and how that fits. And we're all different, so we're all going to engage with people in a different way. You kind of have to internalize this and make this your own. So if someone were to say to me, why are people so upset with all the new laws to prevent voter fraud and ensure only legal votes are counted? Like, I could go full bore into like the race class narrative, something like, well, that's really interesting that you're saying that. I think most people, whether they're white, black, or brown, really value their freedom to vote, and they feel that sometimes when politicians get involved, they make it more complicated than it really needs to be. There, that's just an opening salvo. into that. I don't know how that feels. I just did that on the fly, just hearing what was being said and thinking about that. Now I made it a little bit more like a television commercial or something, right? But even if you just took it to its most basic level and just said something like, well, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I think most people agree that, and say most people agree, like you're including them too, that voting shouldn't be this complicated, right? And I'm glad that you agree with that it shouldn't be complicated. It should be something that we have as a right, and those things, just as an opening conversation. Would someone else like to give it a shot? How about we do that? I'll put this statement back up if that's easier. So, or wait, we can put it again in the chat, I guess. And then someone can come off mute and maybe, here's the outrageous statement. I'll copy it and pop it in. And
Kathleen?
Yeah, go for it.
That by arguing in our national news on a daily basis about these kinds of laws that haven't been necessary since our founding fathers first incepted our election process, our enemies are laughing at us. And that we are showing weakness and division when we should be showing strength as a country.
Okay, so let's take that statement and see if we might be able to make it more directly maybe attach or adjoin to what the person has said. So Kathleen, we're having the conversation. I'm your neighbor. Hi. Mm-hmm. Came out and I was like, oh, Kathleen, I've been meaning to say something. I don't really understand. I know we're on opposite sides of our fence right here. But I don't really understand why people are so upset about the new laws that are preventing voter fraud and ensure that only, legal votes are counted. So Kathleen, one of the best things you can do is repeat back a little bit about what I just said, because then I know you're listening. So let's see if you might be able to modify your response a little bit to me actually saying that to you. So, I mean, I don't know what the big fuss is about. This is just to make sure that that we prevent voter fraud and that legal votes are counted.
I don't have any problem with trying to prevent voter fraud, but I think that by having this discussion on the nightly news every day, that we are projecting an aura of weakness when we should be projecting strength as a democracy that leads the world.
Okay, can someone else jump in? Let's do a group role play. And I'm going to make the statement and someone else pick up Kathleen's theme and see how we might be able to say it in our own words. So I don't know why people are so upset about these new laws preventing voter fraud. Yeah, they're only meant to ensure legal votes and that only legal votes are counted.
So anybody jump in. These workshops are times that you can really practice.
Since the United States claims to be a democracy, it's important that we lead by example and permit every legal vote to be counted from all people, no matter where they live, what their skin color, black, brown, or white happens to be in our country. People are watching us.
Cool. Now, if we could reverse the order of the shared value and lead with that, that's the whole idea. Lead with the shared value. So Barbara, if you just reversed what you said, and can you say it backwards?
I guess we need to be leading by examples and showing that people of all backgrounds and economic and racial groups have complete freedom to vote in our country.
So let me repeat back to you what I heard with the reversal of leading with the value. So Dwayne, I hear what you're saying, and it seems to me that most people, whether they are live in rural areas or urban areas, they're men or women, they're white or black, believe that, and now I got the shared value up front, the statement of it. What were you saying, Barbara?
By doing that, we lead by example and show
Yeah. So we feel that as a country, we should lead by example. Okay, so whether you're white, black, or brown, wherever you live, your gender, whatever it is, they feel that we should really be leading by example. And and then you get into the detail of however that looks, right? Like talking about most people, most of us, most people I speak with, or I'm sure you feel the same way, that we should be leading. Barbara, I'm sure that you feel that we should be leading by example, right? Something like that. Dwayne, I feel that we should be, you and I, we should be leading by example, right? And as a country, we should be doing that. Going back to what Kathleen said, like, you know, the rest of the world is watching us. We're the democracy in the world, like, you know, USA, right? Like that's the kind of thing, and we are leading that way. And yes, so I think that works. Let's go another complete theme. I want to dig into this a little bit more. I'm going to make a statement, and I would like someone to take one of those many shared values. Remember, there's a whole list of those shared values that we put out there about it being fair, about it being easy, about it being like your civic duty, any of those things. And then you start with that and then have a comment. So here, I'm your neighbor, and I'm saying right now, I don't know why people are so upset with all these new laws. They're just meant to prevent voter fraud and ensure that only legal votes are counted.
Okay, I'll try it.
Awesome.
I totally agree with you that all of our legal votes should be counted, and that people do seem to be upset about these laws. And so I think it's important, if we are setting an example for the world, that we make sure that the laws, any laws that we establish about voting, should be sure that they are fair and include every citizen who has a desire to vote, and make it easy for them to vote.
Good. Yes. And so what were the shared values, Mary, that you really tapped into when you made that statement?
Making it fair, making it easy, and making sure that it is legal, so that we could kind of include that person's concerns. I think we would all want to make sure that our votes are legal and easy to count and fair. That kind of.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I think it's interesting that you brought that up, because like you and I think most people agree that voting should be fair, it should be easy, and it should be legal. Right? Maybe a good way to start. Not saying, oh, that's not what they're doing. No, they're trying to steal the vote. They're trying to prevent people from voting, right? A completely different conversation, right? And hopefully, where I leave that with Mary is that we can have another conversation down the line. Remember, this is only the start of something. It's only the start of a conversation. But maybe Mary is a troll, okay? We have troll Mary up there who's like, all I want to do is get under Dwayne's skin. I want to devil him. I want to be, you know, a troll. I don't care what Dwayne is saying. It's a bunch of BS, and I just want to go Trump. You know, like that's all I'm here to do. I'm just here to say, tear it all down. Let's break it down. Let's do all this stuff. So how do we know whether Mary is a target, meaning a persuadable, or whether Mary is a troll? And so for that, I'm going to flip it over to Kristen. And I'll start sharing the screen.
All right. Oh, are you going to share screen or did you?
Do you want to do it? I could either way. What would you prefer?
If you want to share screen, that's fine.
Cool. And I will do it.
Yes. Okay. So we are now we have our shared value, and we have dug in how to approach those opening statements with a potential persuaded voter. But now we're going to shift to talking about intent discovery. And this is, I think, the area where a lot of people struggle, because your first instinct when somebody says something that is an outrageous statement is to jump on that outrageous statement and say something back like, oh, those are conspiracy theories, those aren't happening, you shouldn't be watching Fox. So we want to avoid doing that straight out of the gate, and we want to dig deeper into the intent and the real concerns that a voter has, because a voter may initially say to you, my real concern is about cleaning up the voter rolls, and then you dig under that and you get to a deeper issue. So first and foremost, I think it would be useful here to just define a few terms. And the terms that I want to define, and just spend a little bit of time on are microaggressions and dog whistles. And I was wondering, let's throw this out to the group. Would anybody be able to define for me what a microaggression or dog whistle is?
So I'll do dog whistle. It originates from the term for a whistle that only a dog can hear. So basically you're saying something that to a normal person would seem like a reasonable statement. But if you're saying it to someone in particular, it was used for the Southern strategy and the racist issues in the 1970s is when it became commonly used. Forced busing would be an example of a dog whistle where, some people might just be against it because they don't want their kids on the bus for 45 minutes, whereas there are others who are like trying to make sure that those red line districts stay redlined.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that is the crux of what we're talking about here right now in this training. And the second portion is determining who you're talking to. Are you talking to a persuadable voter? Are you talking to someone who is a target who would agree with your position? If anybody has come in contact with Notchenker and Sarios research, she found that 48% of voters are in that middle persuadable group. They are open to our positions, but they are also vulnerable to dog whistle tactics that underlie or imply racism or inequity or discrimination, but on the surface seem to be very benign. So a troll would fall into that latter category. And then the last thing that we want to talk about before we really get into this is meet people where they are. You are going to have conversations with people who off the bat say something that sounds outrageous. They come out with that outrageous statement. But your job is to determine what is the intent behind what they are saying and how do I effectively engage a persuadable voter and avoid the troll. As Dwayne coined, do not feed the trolls, keep trolls lonely. They are not winnable. And you are just expending time and energy that you could be using to talk to a truly persuadable voter. So now we want to go to our next slide about discovering intent. And this is really what we pretty much talked about. On the previous slide, a dog whistle is, as Kathleen explained, it is something that talks about division or race or discrimination in a way that is very coded, that doesn't just come out and explicitly espouse racism. The right has systematically used these to create a divide within the community of voters along racial lines so that they would ignore the overlap and commonality that they have on issues like class or geography. And that gets to the last point, which is what are our goals versus their goals? Their goals are to divide the electorate. And by dividing the electorate, you weaken the ability of the electorate to advocate for what they want. Because now they're locked into a zero-sum game where resources are finite. And if our side loses, the other side wins. And if the other side loses, we win. And we want to break out of that frame. We want to talk about everyone benefiting in a truly inclusive way. So in a couple of minutes here, we're going to get into a role play that Penn and I are going to do, where Penn is going to be talking to me, the potential persuadable voter, and we're going to role play this conversation. And the one thing that you want to keep, or a couple things you want to keep in mind when you engage in these conversations is we are in a way creating a safe space. We want to keep the focus on the voter that you're talking about. You want to dig in deeper into the value that you share. You want to express understanding or at least some sympathy or empathy for where they're coming from, and keep asking questions. You want to be inquisitive. What you don't want to do is just jump on them for a conspiracy theory and shut them down. So in a way, sometimes that also means picking your battles. Sometimes people are going to come back at you with something that is truly outrageous, but the intent behind it is not necessarily malicious. It comes from a place of a lack of understanding or a lack of broader experience. And we want to make sure that we account for that, because as Dwayne and Penn stated at the top of this, these are not one-off conversations. Persuadable voters are going to move over time, and we need to allow some space for that. And with that, Penn and I are going to role play. So we can stop the screen for a little bit, and then we'll come back to this slide. And so Penn and I are going to role play. We're friends. We're meeting for coffee. And for some reason, the topic of voter suppression and these laws comes up over coffee. So I'm going to say, for example, hey, Penn, I just thought this was so strange. I went out to the Board of Elections in Middleburg. I went to vote today, and they didn't even ask me for a driver's license. Okay, and so now that's my outrageous statement. And Penn, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a few little rules, because I'm going to include you all as much as possible. So when I go like this, that means we've stopped the role play, okay? So I'm going to right now stop the role play. Just from what Kristen has said, can you figure out where she's coming from? I mean, does this seem to be a genuine question, or does this seem to be something that she's starting an argument that she wants to get my goat on, or can you tell from that?
You can't possibly know until you listen to her further.
Exactly. So by that, in the beginning, now we have some friendship here. If it was just somebody that I met in line while we were voting, it would be different. We have some background together, but I still don't know exactly. So what's the first thing that I'm going to do to find out more information? Anybody?
Oh, why are you, is this something you're worried about? What is your concern, sort of?
Okay, good. So I'm going to give it back to her by asking, I hear you are concerned about, can you tell me a little bit more? Why are you worried about this? Whatever way you want to say it, but I'm getting more information. This is about me getting more information from her, okay? So I can make some determination about intent. So now I'm going to go back into the role play now. So I hear that you are concerned about this. I'm really glad you brought this up, because it's something I've been thinking about too. So tell me a little bit more about what worries you about this, not having IDs asked.
Well, you see all these articles and news stories in the media now. People who have passed away who are still on the voting rolls. People who moved and they're now registered in 2 places. I mean, how can we say that we have a fully secure election if the voter rolls are such a mess?
Okay. Did I get any more information from her? What are you leaning towards in your thinking? Some people have nodded their heads. What are you leaning towards in your thinking? Is this worth my pursuing?
Yes.
Yes. Do other people agree?
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to pursue it. Any suggestions about where I might go with this? Remember, this is the point at which I now have enough information. I want to make sure that we're talking on my turf about the values that I want to bring out. All those that we talked about with Dwayne in the beginning. Okay, so I want to turn it to that and not be, I'm not going to get into what articles did you read. And I saw articles where the only Republican, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into that, right? I want to turn it to my values. Okay, so what would be the statement that I would make then that could turn it to my values? Now that I've gotten a little more information, anybody?
We've been able to have free and fair elections for hundreds of years without requiring that kind of ID and we haven't had any issues.
Okay, and somebody else, other thoughts?
I share your desire that, you know, only people who are legally allowed to vote, vote.
Okay, anybody else?
This is Christy. I would say something along the line, well, sometimes things, when we see it on TV, it's hard to understand, you know, to filter. And what I have done is gone to the county election office and got to know it better at a local level and talk to people locally instead of nationally. I don't know, that maybe that's not a very good answer.
Well, those are all those, I mean, this is a place to really try out things. You want to make sure, though, that you are going to start bringing up values. And Christy, what the little problem I have with yours is you could get into, oh yeah, but I read an article in which there were that many, then you're onto facts. We do not want to go arguing facts because we never get to. Anybody else a thought of how you could make sure that we are on our turf about values? Okay, I'm gonna try one. So, so Kristen has just said, you know, she wants to make sure that everyone who votes is, you know, I think that's a really good point, Kristen. I feel like that's really important what you said, that we all know that everyone who voted is a legal voter. And here's my concern. My concern has been that there are people who go to vote and they've been taken off the rolls and they didn't even know that. I want to make sure that everybody who wants to vote gets to vote. I'm concerned about that. And I'm concerned that we don't go back to a time where certain people there were times in the South that certain people were not allowed to vote because of color of skin or because of where they lived. I want to make sure that no matter where I live, what the color of my skin is, where I go to vote, that my vote is going to, if I'm voting legally, that my vote is going to be counted. That's what I'm concerned about. So
Yeah.
what have I, yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
No. I think you should finish that thought first.
So what have I done there? Two things. I validated her, and then I put it on my turf. Okay. Now, Kristen, it's time to you to respond.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I agree that everyone should have the right to vote, and you know, the ballot box should be accessible, and that right should be protected. You know, and you shouldn't be knocked off the roll without being notified about it, just for people's protections. You know, and I don't have a problem with souls to polls. I just want to make sure that we are cleaning up the voter roll.
I think we're in really very similar places, and I think that there are a lot of people who feel the way we do. Mm-hmm. So what have I done there? I'm not going to go further in the discussion, right? We tend to, and I'm very bad at this, we tend to push the issue. We want to, oh, we have a little agreement, well, let's push it further. Stop. When you have agreement, stop. You notice what I did? I said, yeah, I think we're in agreement. You know, I think that so I really want to emphasize that to people. Don't keep pushing just because there's agreement, because you will run into disagreement. You don't want to do that. You want to stop. Remember, it's long-term, and you want to stop at that point. Okay, now we're going to do another role play. Let me just, before we do that, let me just get some feedback from people. Does that all make sense to people? What happened? I had to first figure out the intent by asking her a question. Once I figured out that she was, you know, honest in her, then I'm looking to make sure that I pivot it to our values and don't go down a path that has to do with facts or figures or whatever, but to pivot it to our values. And then we found common ground, and then I stopped it. I didn't go further. Barbara.
What if she had come back and said instead, but that's why we have provisional ballots in all jurisdictions if somebody's name doesn't appear on the roll for that district? How would you have handled that?
Okay, does everybody know what Barbara's talking about?
We're hovering over a rabbit hole. I just want to, because it's not about the issue, it's about how we talk about it. So just want to alert you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you, Dwayne. I think that's a good point, because here's what I would do with somebody with knowledgeable like that. I'd say, wow, you are really knowledgeable. You know, most people don't even know about provisional ballots. So before I go too deeply into something, validate the positive thing that the person has said, that they're knowledgeable, because part of what we're trying to set up, and we progressives are accused, and we sometimes are guilty of this, of feeling like we know it better than anybody. Okay. And I'm the first one, my husband will back me. I'm the first one to feel that. So I've got to work against that, which is whenever I see somebody who's knowledgeable about something, I'm going to validate that. I don't necessarily go into it, and if we have more time, but I would validate when people bring up a kind of a little bit off the beaten track, knowledgeable statement. Let that be a positive thing by saying, wow, most people don't even know about provisional ballots. I'm really impressed that that's something. Have you ever had to use one, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go too much further, but validate whenever you can. When somebody brings up a more technical issue, validate it first, that you're impressed that they know it, rather than argue with them about it. Does that make sense? Just use that as an opportunity.
Yeah, Trump actually did that a lot. And, you're all very special. We love you kind of stuff. And that kind of validation does go a long way.
Right. Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah. So Kristen, we're going to do another one. So I'm going to do the same thing of stopping. Go ahead, Kristen. We have a short period of time. So.
Yeah, I'll get this. So, Penn, I went out to the Board of Elections yesterday, and they don't even ask you for a driver's license to make sure that you're a registered voter. I mean, how can we claim that this election was fair?
Wow, I can see that you're really concerned about this. And of course, I want to make sure that we have good elections. So tell me a little bit more about what worries you about this.
Well, you've seen it. I mean, they've found all over the country. They're doing news stories about, dead people on the voter rolls, people registered in 2 places. I mean, the voter rolls are a mess.
Well, I have to say that I can understand we need to have our voter rolls cleaned up if that's going on. But I tell you what my main concern is. My concern is that people are not being encouraged to vote and helped to vote. And our country is based on everybody having a vote. And I'm concerned that we're going backwards on that.
I totally disagree. I mean, that always comes up. Nobody's being prevented from voting. I was never prevented from voting. I mean,
do you have any other feelings about that? Are you worried at all about people not being able to vote?
Well, you know why this is happening and why Democrats are pushing back on it so hard. It's because they'll never get elected. They know it. They only get elected by, encouraging people who are illegal, to vote and getting them on the voter rolls, or, changing votes, or, getting, dead people to vote.
It's very, very interesting, because I read about people who feel this way, and I know that we have a friendship, so I'm glad to actually know somebody, but who feels this way. But I got to say, that's nothing. I totally disagree with that worry. I'm much more worried about what we're going to do in terms of keeping people from voting and what that does to our democracy. So I think this is just someplace that we probably don't really agree with, but I know the other day when we were talking, we had some talks about where we were going to go shopping. Okay, so I'm pivoting away. I have decided that what Kristen is talking about, I'm not going to go. Did anybody have a different feeling from that? No. So I'm pivoting away. Don't feed the troll. I'm pivoting away in as nice a way as I can. I know I read about other people and wow, now I have somebody I really know who feels that way. And we obviously disagree. I restate what I'm worried about. I restate it. And then I go from there to changing the topic. Because frankly, I want my statement to be the last thing that's heard.
So Pen, could
yeah.
I just add one little thing that I have tried? I love your ending and the pivot, but I would just add, you know, I know we both love our country and that we're just looking at this from a different angle. And in my opinion, the best way to protect our nation is to make sure everyone's right to vote is sacred.
Great.
Now let's go shopping.
Yes, great. I love that. I love that. Finding commonality when you can and pivoting away and making sure that your statement is the last. Yeah, or trying to make sure that your statement is the last.
How can you make sure of that if she comes back and says, oh, you've just drunk that liberal commie Kool-Aid? What are you going to do then?
I would probably laugh and I say, I think we've both been drinking Kool-Aid then because you've been drinking it too, just a different Kool-Aid.
Well, what I actually, Pen, instead of going there with the Kool-Aid thing, I find that's a rabbit hole. And I always just pivot back to that. You know what? We're both patriots here. We both love our country. Let's remember that. You know, and I always recommend to my candidates, if you want to see the master of the pivot, go watch Elizabeth Warren. I don't think there's anybody better at the pivot than Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, really? That's good.
Oh my God, she is the master.
That's very good to know. Good. Okay.
And we're getting towards the end here. I have a hard stop at 1, so I want to.
So what I would like to say is that, Dwayne, did you have anything to add? And then I want to talk a moment. I hope this has been helpful. We will continue in our working group to do role plays and do more of this kind of work. So please, you know, just keep thinking about this and come back. I will send this presentation and the recording to all of you.